The world of studio sound is a funny place. It seems like most of the time the things that we all want are not the brand new designs, but the old stuff, things that have been around for 50, 60 years plus. Audio manufacturers obviously know that, and that's why they're offering so many recreations of classic designs, which is brilliant. If you can get hold of an 1176 or a Fairchild without the vintage price tag and without the vintage maintenance worries, everybody wins. What's best of all, though, is when somebody comes along and brings back a design from extinction, just like Warm Audio have done with their WA-19. So this is a recreation of the classic AKG D19 dynamic mic. And if you've not heard of a D19, you may have heard of the Ringo mic. Well, that's this. They got used so much on the drums in the early days of the Beatles that the name kind of stuck. But they were discontinued in the early 60s and since then have become a bit of a studio rarity. Well, these brand new ones cost you £200 and in theory you get an exact recreation, at least according to Warm Audio. What we're going to try and answer today is, what do these things sound like? Are they actually good for things in a modern studio? And are they worth it for the price tag? Let's start off by talking about how this thing works. We've got a fixed cardioid pattern. It's a dynamic mic. And the first thing you might notice is this kind of series of slots here along the front. Now, with most mics, that would be to keep like the cardioid pattern tighter than it otherwise would be, like think shotgun mics, that kind of thing. But not here. That's actually to do with controlling proximity effect, which is where the closer you get with any directional mic to a sound source, the low end gets artificially boosted. Well, AKG and Electro Voice, who developed this technology, realized that if you let low frequencies into the back of the capsule in just the right kind of way, that can even itself out. The closer you get, the more they just bring themselves down and counteract that boost. So it means a flat sound kind of no matter what distance you are to the sound source. And it also, as an added bonus, gives you a flatter kind of off-axis response as well. Two massive pluses and two things that are like surprisingly rare to see considering they had this technology in 1957. Now, in terms of switches and controls, there's one. It's this sleeve behind the capsule just here. And what that does is introduce a high-pass filter. And again, most mics, you would think, oh, that's an EQ circuit, but not here. That's another just passive acoustic kind of design. It lets low frequencies in, again, behind the capsule, to just cancel themselves out in a non-distance dependent way, just kind of all the time. Super useful, super elegant, nice to have, but that's kind of it for the outside. Internally, we've got our dynamic capsule just here. That has a humbucking coil built in, which is super important because this thing does not have a transformer. Now, that's quite rare to say about dynamic mics, especially at this price range. Transformers are useful for a few things. One of them is reducing radio frequency interference. Another is to impedance match and just give you a little bit more level on the output of a mic, but they come with downsides. One of those is transient response, and the other is just kind of a bit of coloration to the sound generally, especially when things get loud and especially in the low end. You take that transformer out, what you're left with is a much clearer transient response, and in theory, just like a truer kind of like more open kind of airy sound. And that's kind of it. We've got our XLR connector at the bottom. And that's really all there is to say. I should point out first that this is my mic. I bought this with my hard-earned money 6 or 7 months ago when they first came out, before I had a YouTube channel as well. So this really is my opinion about this mic, nothing more, nothing less. I'm going to play you some examples. You can make your own decisions, but just know that this is like uninfluenced. I'm just trying to help you guys make a better decision about whether this mic is kind of worth it for you. That said, let's have a listen to the WA-19 now. So here it is, the sound of the WA-19 on my voice. Now, if you're like I was when I bought this mic, you were maybe expecting like a warmer kind of vintage sound than this actually delivers. It's quite a bright mic. This really is very like high mids focused. There's like a nice open high end. I think that's thanks to that transformer, but like the low end, even quite close, just feels really, really controlled, right? It's not getting overblown at all, to the point where like that high pass filter, I have never ever found myself using that because the low end just really feels like it's being tucked in anyway by this mic. If you wanted to check it out, it sounds like this. So there we go. No more low end. In fact, to me, that almost sounds like too little low end, really. So I usually just find myself leaving that out. I find that actually, if anything, there's a bit of a cutoff at 50 hertz anyway with this mic. You may notice a bit of a slight low midsy honk, like a 500 hertz telephony kind of thing. And you may notice a slight kind of zinginess to the high end. They're things that you can easily EQ out. And I think there are loads of great qualities to this mic too, but they're there and you should know about them. Talking of which, let's do some musical shootouts now. I've got an acoustic guitar lined up over here, and we're going to shoot this thing out against some mics that you probably know the sound of quite well, even if you don't own them. The first would be a Neumann KM184. So that's a really flat, like relatively expensive small diaphragm condenser mic, because we just want to see how that compares to like the best of the best. But equally, this thing is much more similar in price to like an SM57. So we're going to shoot it out against one of those two and analyze it in terms of bang for buck. With that said, let's get stuck right in. Okay, so to my ears, the WA-19 kind of sits in a middle ground between those two mics. Where the 57 is lo-fi, it's detailed. Where the KM184 is very, very true, it's kind of more characterful. It's not like a super flat presentation of instruments, but you probably wouldn't expect that for this price range, right? What it does feel like is quite a forward, bright, and characterful representation of that instrument. The transients are there, but they're just controlled a little bit compared to the KM184. You may notice a slight kind of zinginess to the sound. Now, this is something I've noticed across a load of different instruments. If you're recording something that's really bright and brash, that can get a little bit too leery. This is not a mic to record really, really bright sources with, or it wouldn't be my first choice all the time anyway. But there are two sides to every coin. By the same token, this mic works really, really well on warmer, darker sound sources. Think T-Tal toms or like baritone guitars, things like that. Talking of drums, actually, let's have a listen to it in the classic mono overhead Ringo position and see how it stacks up against some Coles overheads as well. Another kind of typical kind of overhead choice. There you go. There's that vintage Ringo thing. It does do it for you. It actually really, really sounds good when you overdrive it as well. Like if you just rage into a pre and bring your output gain down, like you can get some really, really cool vintage tones out of this mic. But actually, stepping away from drums, where I've liked this most is on electric guitar. Sometimes, if you think of an SM57 as like the vanilla of guitar recording, sometimes you want something just a bit more characterful, just with a bit more like edge, a bit more something special. Well, actually, I found the WA-19, the resonances it has just give like a bit of a kind of leery edge to things in a really cool and really involving way. You can jam it really close up on the speaker cabinet without the low end getting overblown, and it just gives a bit more of a special quality to things. It just feels like it deserves your attention in the mix a little bit more, which is really cool. I have really enjoyed it as a snare side mic, actually, as a bit of like a kind of splatty John Bonham kind of sound. And they're also pretty good for vocals. Like if you want to have some kind of like vintage sounding BVs sitting behind a really posh lead vocal, this works great for that. Or indeed like a Beach Boysy style kind of vintage lead vocal too. In short, a much more versatile mic than you might think. I've ended up using it on a load of different sound sources, and so long as the sound itself isn't too bright, isn't too harsh, it's usually worked really, really well. So in a way, I think it's almost a shame that they're marketing this mic so heavily just on its Beatles association, because it sets you up to expect one thing only, which kind of does this mic a bit of a disservice. Like, yes, you can use it on mono overhead and it'll sound really cool, but it might be that there are other places on that same drum kit where it'll work just as well, if not better. It has a beautifully controlled low end. It has a bright forward mid-range. It has an open, if slightly resonant top end. You have to watch out for it on really bright sound sources, but again, it sounds really nice on darker things. So did I get what I was expecting when I bought this mic? I'm not sure that I did, but I'm kind of glad that I didn't, because if what I've lost is a one-stop shop for British invasion era rock sounds, I've gained like a really versatile mic. It works really well on a load of different things. And I think more importantly, like it really doesn't sound like anything else. It's not trying to be flat. It's trying to be characterful. And the character it has, it's not like a 57. It's not like any other dynamic mic I can think of, especially at this price range. And I've been really enjoying having it in my mic locker. Now, I can't tell you, though, how much use you'll get out of it, whether this is the right thing for you. But I hope after watching this video, you've got a bit of an easier time deciding, or at least you can make a bit of a more informed decision. If you do end up buying one, or if you've got one already, let me know. I'd love to hear what you're using these on already. But for now, I'll say thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you have a great day and have a great session. I'll see you soon.